Freedom's greetings, Helldivers. Ervin here, and today I'm bringing you my all-in-one guide to boosters in Helldivers 2. Since the game's launch, many boosters have been added, but you still only have 4 you can choose from, and they still have very poor or non-existent descriptions as to what the hell they do. So I thought it would be fun to pull a 2-in-1 special here by telling you in excruciating detail what every booster in the game does, while also rating its effectiveness via a tier list. If something is S tier, it's basically a must pick in my mind. Something so strong, I never want to play a mission without it unless I'm forced to. If it's A tier, it's something that is borderline must pick or must pick under certain conditions due to a niche. If it's B tier, it's a solid booster that you'll never be upset about having unless it was picked over something in the S tier. If something is C tier, it's an overall underperforming booster, and in almost all situations, you could have picked something better. And if something is dumpster tier, it needs a major rework, as it's basically just actively trolling or griefing your team to bring. And I bet based on that description alone, you already know which ones are probably going in there. Sound good? Cool. Let's get started. Let's start off with one of the lesser known and understood boosters, that being the Localization Confusion booster. This booster came out with just about no clear information as to what it was for, and the description is vague at best. Some people thought it made patrols spawn less frequently, which turned out to be false, while others believed that it was affecting enemy reinforcement calls. The answer requires us to first define an important game mechanic. If you spent a lot of time around my channel, you already know that the enemy has an internal cooldown between its ability to call in reinforcements that scales based on your difficulty setting down to a minimum of 1 minute and 30 seconds on Super Helldive difficulty, just give or take. This cooldown begins as soon as the tag at the top of your screen that indicates an ongoing reinforcement wave has faded. Localization Confusion increases this cooldown by 10% and also increases the total time it takes for reinforcements to enter the map once called by 10%. Although this second part is not confirmed within a shadow of a doubt. Note that only the second part potentially affects scripted enemy encounters. The 10% increase to the cooldown only applies to manually called in reinforcements, like when the automatons fire their flares or the terminids spew pheromones. It has no effect on the cooldown for things like detector towers, spread democracy, geological survey scripted calls, eradicates, or evacuate high value assets calls. Overall, this leaves the usefulness of this booster extremely niche and not very competitive with the other options, even when utilizing it to its fullest by baiting and working around reinforcement calls during their cooldown. Not to mention, this cooldown actually scales down, becoming smaller and smaller as you complete more objectives during standard mission types, making the 10% difference less and less noticeable if you ever noticed it to begin with. Overall, I give the Localization Confusion booster a C ranking, as it's extremely niche, has very little impact, and requires a lot of game knowledge to even get any value out of it in the first place. Next up is Stamina Enhancement. This booster, unlocked very early on in Mobilize, is extremely powerful and does a lot of different things. Not only does Stamina Enhancement increase your maximum stamina by 30%, but it also improves your recovery rate by about 30%, more or less, depending on the suit of armor that you're wearing. Generally speaking, these two benefits alone are enough for every Helldiver to consider this booster an S tier choice, and should generally be utilized during every deployment. But it actually does even more than that. It increases the speed of your Helldiver by 23% if wearing medium armor, as well as varying amounts for all armors in between heavy and the very lightest 50 armor suits. This notably also increases the speed your Helldiver moves while aiming down sights, as well as walking pace. There are some limitations, though. Ultralight armor does not gain any speed from this enhancement, only the previously mentioned improvements to max stamina and recovery rate, likely due to the game already considering the 50 armor suit maximum speed. This also likely is to balance out ultralight extra padded armors, which are basically just medium armor with the additional benefit of ultralight movement speed. This booster brings medium armors up to only 6% less speed than ultralight armors, which also means a medium padded standard issue suit plus the stamina booster has a Helldiver operating with 150 armor and only 6% less top speed than a suit of, say, 50 armor with the scout passive. Another notable limitation is although your stamina recovery speed increases with the stamina booster, this effect is not in addition to the increased recovery rate that you obtain from crouching, which is 25%, or the further regeneration speed gained by being prone, which is 50%. Only the highest recovery bonus applies at any given time. Now, all of that being taken into account, this still makes it an absolute must take for any Helldiver, especially those that wear any amount of armor beyond the lightest for the speed boost. This is covered in great detail by a content creator known as Ferret the Bandit, who made an extremely comprehensive and thoroughly tested write up on this subject. So, if you want even more details on the stamina enhancement, I recommend checking out that video next, as I'll be leaving a link to it in the description. Moving on to the muscle enhancement booster, and something you are going to notice about pretty much all of these boosters is they don't do anything close to their actual in game description, and you'll likely never in your wildest dreams guess this is what they were doing unless you tested it personally. And muscle enhancement is no exception. It reduces any and all movement slowing effects by 75%. This includes snow, high water, although it does not impact your swim speed, mud, tall grass or bushes, sloped terrain, sandstorms, and blizzards, as well as even the slowing effect impaired by terminid acid. So, this impacts a lot of stuff, although a lot of it is oftentimes avoidable, only serving more so as a convenience and less so a necessity. Overall, I rate the muscle enhancement booster as an A tier booster. It's extremely powerful, although not essential in my mind. During terminal missions or planets that have blizzards or sandstorms as a modifier, where you're going to get the full benefit from this booster, it's borderline a must take option for me. Next, let's talk about the UAV Recon booster. A Helldiver's base detection range at which they can pick up enemy movement on their map is 50 meters at a baseline. The UAV Recon booster increases this range by 50%, taking us up to 75 meters away. However, it is worth mentioning that the bridge ship module nuclear radar, which has a broken description stating it improves your enemy ping radius on the minimap by 50 meters, is also wrong. This module also increases your radar range by a multiplicative 50%, bringing your base detection range for the enemy up to 75 meters all on its own. Then boosted, should you bring the UAV booster, up to 112.5 meters. Now, that is a very far distance to be able to spot an enemy on the map. However, there are some problems I have with this booster, which I feel hurt its rating severely. First off, Helldivers cannot do much else besides look at their map while looking at it. No shooting, no stratagems, only movement, meaning your in combat actual benefits from the increased radar range are going to be severely limited by the circumstances that you're in. Not to mention, most encounters in Helldivers 2 happen within a decently close proximity, typically within 50 meters, and the majority of enemy visual detection range is within 60 meters, regardless, meaning a radar with the nuclear upgrade is always going to spot out any enemies before they are capable of spotting you. Not to mention, you can potentially just see enemies out to the UAV's maximum range regardless with your eyes, meaning this booster is only helpful in regards to the area you are not currently physically looking at. Add in the fact that this booster does not affect the range you can see enemies when utilizing the scout passive to ping distant locations for enemy information, and you can see why I'll be placing this booster in the C tier. While Helldivers will get a reasonable amount of mileage out of this booster early game, as it is available very early on in your career and does have value before you get the nuclear radar upgrade, this is something everyone should be growing out of eventually in favor of better options. All right, time for Hellpod Space Optimization, the very first booster you typically unlock that gives you full starting ammo for your primary and secondary weapon, stims, and grenades, both at the beginning of the match and every time you are reinforced back into the game, instead of only 66% or so of your maximum ammo on average and half your maximum stims. This is obviously extremely useful for the vast majority of games. However, the effectiveness and benefits involved with this booster scale dramatically based on how often the players in the match actually die. If your team doesn't die at all, for example, this booster basically just saved you a resupply to start the match before heading on your way to complete the mission, which is actually not very useful at all when you think about it. Add on that this does not impact your support weapon's starting ammo at all. which comes with full ammo after unlocking the superior packaging methodology, assuming you're on one of the patches Arrowhead has decided to keep it functional. And this booster is S tier for the teams that die a lot, A tier for those that die a moderate amount, and B tier for those that only rarely fall in battle during their operations. This booster is typically a staple for most teams, which is why it's great the DSS, while the orbital blockade is active, gives our Helldivers this booster for free while fighting on the planet that it's orbiting. The Expert Extraction Pilot booster is one of the most underwhelming boosters in the game. It has but one effect once per game at maximum. All it does is decrease the time it takes for Pelican 1 to arrive by 15%, dropping it from 2 minutes down to 1 minute and 42 seconds. This also has absolutely no benefits whatsoever during eradicates and extract essential personnel due to the extraction being scripted to begin immediately following the completion of the mission. Notably, the complex stratagem plotting modifier that increases stratagem call in time by 50% does also impact your extraction timer, bringing the base extraction time up to 3 minutes instead of 2. Meaning, using this booster during this operational modifier reduces your extraction time down to 2 minutes and 33 seconds, instead saving 27 seconds, opposed to only saving you 18. Either way, this is pretty worthless for anyone outside the speedrunning community where every second counts and should never be picked in higher priority to pretty much anything else, landing it in the dumpster tier. Motivational Shocks is something I've been advocating to be buffed for a long time now. This booster in its current state only reduces the duration of acid slow from terminate operations, ice plant slow, and stamina drain, as well as stun duration from our own arsenal by 50%. It currently has no other benefits that I am aware of. Considering muscle enhancement already reduces the impact slowing effect like acid has on our Helldiver, as well as a bunch of improvements to our ability to traverse the landscape, this booster in most scenarios is a strict downgrade and cannot realistically compete for a slot, landing it in the C tier as it's not entirely useless. The effects are just a tad underwhelming, and there are always going to be better options than this thing. All right, well, it wouldn't be an Erevan video without mentioning the Vitality Booster, which seems to be making an appearance in just about all of my videos lately. Vitality Booster has one of the most confusing descriptions in the game, leading to many misconceptions as to what it in reality actually does. Functionally, this booster applies a multiplicative 20% reduction to all incoming damage your Helldiver receives as part of the armor calculation. I went into a great deal of detail on this subject in a previous video where I discussed exactly what armor does, how it works, and how you can work out the armor best for you, that I'll leave a link to below for you to use if you would like to check it out following this one. But essentially, 20% damage resistance in a game where going from 100 armor to 150 armor only reduces the damage you take by 25% is quite a lot, as for most players, this is going to be effectively as strong as having an entire additional suit of armor worth of protection. For some context, as far as survivability, there is no better booster than this one, landing it at the top of S tier without even going over how it also reduces the damage you receive from dead sprint and completely nullifies the damage received from acid and lethal chest wounds due to a rounding error where these damages are reduced from 1 to 0. Now, while you always could just not get hit, as they say, this is pretty unrealistic for the vast majority of players, and this damage resistance will be felt across just about every operation you play, saving you many lives in the process. There is almost no reason, apart from speedrunning, you would ever leave this booster out of a loadout, in my opinion. It's just that good. Speaking of dead sprint, let's talk about the newest booster. This booster allows you to continue sprinting even after exhausting all of your stamina in exchange for your health draining at a rate of 112 per 3 ticks, in theory. This feels horrendous, draining you to death's door where the passive ceases function, thankfully unable to outright kill you, stopping with 1 health remaining after only 24 seconds of additional sprint time in exchange for your entire health bar. But wait, as I said in the Vitality Booster section, Vitality Booster curves the health lost while sprinting with the Dead Sprint Booster from 112 per 3 ticks down to 001, I believe. This allows a Helldiver utilizing both of these boosters together to sprint for 80 full seconds before depleting their health after expending all of their stamina, making the booster much more useful. As Vitality Booster is what I would call a must take S tier booster anyway, this makes the proposition of bringing Dead Sprint along in addition much more viable. The thing is, though, Stamina Booster is already a huge improvement to how much sprinting you can do and how fast your Helldiver in higher values of armor move, making it on average a much better choice than Dead Sprint, leaving it to only potentially compete for those last two remaining booster slots on a team. In that context, I would say Dead Sprint is B tier. It's not great. Its effects are only bad if utilized without vitality, which no one should realistically consider anyway. And the effect it has on your overall mobility is what I would call mediocre, making B tier feel very appropriate. All right, time for the fan favorite, the experimental infusion booster. This one is beloved by Helldivers the galaxy over for its capability to give your stims that extra zing. But what is it doing exactly? In addition to your stims healing you as they do normally, including the ones administered by the stim pistol, the experimental infusion booster increases your damage resistance by a further multiplicative 10% that can stack with vitality booster, allowing you to soak even more damage and potentially out sustain even more damage during the rapid healing provided by the stim. In addition, you also gain 10% movement speed while your stims are active, meaning lighter armors gain a higher amount of overall speed while stims are active. For example, the ultralight suit's 5.88 ms increases to 6.46 while the booster is active, allowing you to outpace every enemy in the game by a substantial margin. This bonus is just generally nice for getting around, as you often don't need your full pack of stims just to heal and can expend them to cut down on travel time by refreshing your stamina. In those situations, it's really nice to also be getting some extra movement speed out of the trade. This booster also makes the practice of pre stimming more rewarding. There are often times in combat Helldivers will take in a situation and estimate that they are about to take some incoming damage while they move to the next place of cover or have just been caught out in the line of fire. Preemptively stimming can help you get out of those situations as the incoming damage then needs to beat out the regenerating effects of the stim. With this booster, though, not only is this still true, but it'll take 10% more firepower to get through that additional resistance, and the movement speed will allow you to reposition that much quicker, making this bonus one that comes up very often during gameplay. There is one negative to this booster, not often considered, and that is a 25% increase to your aiming reticle sway during the stims. This isn't something you'll often notice unless you are also moving while trying to shoot, where the extra 25% becomes very noticeable. But it is still a downside nonetheless, and I like to be thorough with my information. That all being said, what do I rank the experimental infusion booster? I really want to give it an S, but as something that is not a permanent, always on benefit that requires a consumable to be utilized, it's not quite what I would call an absolute must have, but the effects it has are damn close. So I'm going to go with A plus here, sticking at the top of A tier, as it's an incredibly good booster, but not quite at the same level as Vitality Booster or Stamina Booster in my mind. If you're someone that's a complete stim addict that constantly runs medic armor, this is probably an S tier for you. Both increased reinforcement budget and flexible reinforcement budget are, in my opinion, dumpster tier. The increase is only one extra life per Helldiver, giving you a total starting budget of 24 lives, and the flexible budget only improves the timer before new reinforcements become available by depleting your lives by 10%, cutting it from 2 minutes to 1 minute and 48 seconds. Helldivers is a game where death is common. This is true. But that's why we have 24 lives if you count our starting Helldivers to get the job done. There is not realistically any operation that should come down to needing more dudes with this amount of lives. Helldivers might be challenging at times, but it is not a FromSoft game where the death toll for a singular boss can breach in the hundreds for death count. Generally speaking, these boosters are best left on the bench, and if your friends are taking these, there is a non zero chance that you should probably be taking it as an insult. Even if we combine these boosters into one, I don't think I can, in my mind, bring it above a C, even if they were together. They're just not worth it to me. So into the dumpster they go. Last but certainly least is the Firebomb Hellpods, which are absolutely the fire in the dumpster tier. This booster is basically just trolling to bring into a match, causing an 8-meter knockback and burning damage over time effect, dealing the typical 50 DPS or 150 damage total that we've become accustomed to when it comes to the burning effect. This effect is applied to every pod dropped from the ship, most notably the ones your teammates drop at the start of the match to gather up before heading off, as you giggle to yourself knowing they didn't realize you brought this thing along. The damage is indiscriminate and overall very weak, only able to threaten the lives of the weakest of our enemies, as well as our own Helldivers. Although there is a niche use deploying turrets near enemies to damage them with a Hellpod, the damage being dealt is utterly insignificant, as I said, and there are just way better options for your consideration for a booster slot. This booster should realistically only be chosen to mess around with some friends, as taking it into quick play is a surefire way to ensure you don't make any new ones. That's going to do it for my full rundown of the boosters. Let me know down below how you feel about the current options for boosters in Helldivers 2. Personally, I feel a lot of these would be better off buffed, combined, or even in the case of the more powerful must pick options, just baked into the game as a base feature in the case of Vitality Booster. From my perspective, if we take far too much damage for the game to feel reasonable without the 20% resistance from Vitality Booster, maybe the booster should do something else and we should just take 20% less damage, for example, to promote utilizing other boosters. That's just my 2 cents, though. Thank you to my coffee supporters who help keep the channel going, and thank you for watching till the end. I'll see you next time. It's easy to forget actually how good Personal Shield is. You survive a lot of shit that you otherwise don't. Like that.